Hello and welcome to the Beaver County Auto Studios. I'm Alan Saunders with Mike Vukovcan, Pittsburgh Sports Live. We're here doing a live postgame from Pitt's impressive 34-13 ACC Coastal Division clinching win at Wake Forest. Just Mike, you know, what an impressive win, what an impressive way to, Pitt could have gone out and backed into this championship, but what a way to go emphatically with this victory at Wake Forest.
It's kind of the way it's been for the last second half of the season. Things look down, and they look like they could be falling apart. And clearly, it was their worst first half. I don't know if it was nerves or whatever the case may be, but whatever was said and done at halftime, things calmed down, and they just completely dominated Wake Forest in the second half. And hats off to Pat Narduzzi. He's a guy that as we've talked and written during the year. A lot of questions. People wanted instant gratification. Why isn't that happening? Well, guess what? He has done something that hasn't been done since the Dan Marino era, and they've won a football championship. They won some Big Easts, but they were tied for those championships. This one is their first outright conference championship, and hey, ACC Coastal Champs. And the thing that I found funny, Alan, was at the beginning of the season, the things that everyone was talking about, I don't want to say everyone, but people were excited about for Pitt was their passing game and their defense. And for a good portion of the season, at least for the passing game, they hasn't been really existent. And then in the biggest game of the year, their defense completely shut down Wake Forest, and Kenny Pickett throws for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny because a lot of the conversation at the very beginning of the season, you remember, maybe it was the first or second day of training camp, Kenny Pickett says, we're not going to go 5-7 again, I guarantee it. Right on the eve of the season, Pat Narduzzi says, I'll see you guys in Charlotte for the ACC championship game. And, you fast forward a few weeks to Pitt sitting at 2-3, get blown out at Central Florida, terrible loss at North Carolina, and those things were looking comical. Yeah. And it wasn't that it wasn't looking good for them; it was looking laughable. That those things were going to come true. And then it's Pickett who comes through in the game that makes it all happen for Pitt. Pat Narduzzi never at all wavered from his young quarterback. That was his guy. He was going to give him every opportunity he needed to grow and develop. And you knew at some point somebody was going to shut down Pitt's running game. It happened to be Wake Forest this week. And then Kenny Pickett comes through with a huge game, makes big plays down the stretch of a big game. And really, Kenny Pickett won them this game. I mean, yeah, great plays by his receivers. Some solid pass protection from the offensive line, creative play calling by Sean Watson when to get away from the run when it wasn't working. Credit in all areas, but Kenny Pickett was the difference maker, and just what a way for that to happen after he didn't play that well the first half of the year, even through the beginning of this winning streak that they're on. They were winning around him, not because of him. They won the game today because of Kenny Pickett.
No question. And let me ask you this. How surprised are you that I don't know what the expectations were at the beginning of the season from outside of the offices? I picked them for 9 wins. They're at 7 wins. Theoretically, they could still do that. I didn't foresee a Coastal Championship. Did you? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 the highest, how does this rank the fact that is this a little ahead of where you thought they would be? Or a lot of people were pointing for 2019 is going to be the year because of a lot of different things, the year where they could challenge for it. Are they a year ahead? How surprised are you with this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there. First is that I didn't expect the rest of the Coastal to kind of I thought Virginia Tech is a lot better than the way they played this year. Mm-hmm. I thought Miami would be a lot better than they are. So I think that, if I predicted 7-5 before the season, which they're sort of right.
Right.
I'm going to be either we're dead on or 1 game off. But I don't think I would have thought that 7-5 would have got them a championship. No. I wouldn't have expected that. And So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think the play of the running backs has elevated this team. When you have guys that are seniors that can play their best football, play better than they have at any point in their entire career, that's a difference maker. It doesn't always happen that way. You want it to. That's kind of how you write it up. But not only are these guys playing their best football, they're playing just at a different level than they had in the past. Obviously, not a fantastic game for either of those guys today. Allison was dinged up a little bit.
96 yards, combined yards.
Yeah, they finished, though, at 96 yards, and both of them under 3.5 yards per carry, which is way down from their season average. But, I just think that the play of those two guys is what has allowed Pitt to get in the position that they were today, and that's the thing that's kind of moved them ahead of pace a little bit. But yeah, I'd say I'm pleasantly surprised, but I don't think them getting to where they are right now from a preseason perspective is crazy. I think where it gets crazy is when you look at where they were 5 games into the season to have the turnaround that they've made from then to now. That's very unexpected.
One guy I wanted to bring up, I mentioned to you before the show that I'm, speaking of surprise, I thought he could be a good player. I thought he would be not a system player. I think that kind of cheapens his value. But Maurice French, he just looks like if he was in a system that was pass happy and just throwing, if he's in the Big 12 conference, that guy would be a superstar right now. That guy, he touches the ball and you just feel as though he's going to break it. The guy has completely, and I remember a funny thing was before the season when I talked to Pat Bostic, we did something on camera, and I asked him about who's the receiver this year is going to step up, who's going to be that everyone's talking about they need a receiver. He said Maurice French. He said he's gotten stronger, he's gotten faster, and he heard from the coaches that they expected a lot, and as he usually is, Pat Bostic was right on target.
Yeah, I think that was kind of interesting because before the season there was a lot of talk. Taysir Mack, obviously a transfer, gets eligible. Thought he would be a difference maker. We talked a lot about Shockey Jacques Louis. We talked a lot about Dontavius Butler-Jenkins as potentially like explosive guys in the passing game. And I think Maurice French kind of ended up flying under the radar a bit as I don't think many people had him pegged as one of the team's top receivers. And I think the thing that makes him an impact player is that he can take any play. It doesn't matter what the play call is. He can take any play and make it into an explosive play. Mm-hmm. He can take it 20 yards. He can take it all the way because of his speed. And there's a difference between that sort of training camp in pad speed and game speed. And I feel like the one thing we've seen from French this year is that he can hit that top gear in traffic with people around him. He's not a quick burst accelerator like maybe like a guy like Quadri Henderson. He does not quite the same, but he's not bothered by where he is on the field. He can get to that top speed on any play, and that's why he's so dangerous. And I do think that Pitt doesn't necessarily have the kind of downfield passing game that a lot of teams do, but when you can take a slant or a bubble screen 65 yards, you don't necessarily need to throw the ball down the field in the air. Their offensive line hasn't been great in pass protection. I think working the ball sideways and then using their speed on the edges is how Pitt has been able to overcome the lack of a downfield passing game.
And that catch he made right before the half on third down was big time. That's Larry Fitzgerald-esque right there as far as going up and getting the ball, knowing that you're probably going to take a hit, a play they needed on third down to keep the drive going and eventually get a touchdown. That's big time. One thing I'm going to bring up with you, the only downside of today's game was, I'm not sure if we have any sort of update from Pitt or anything, but the injury to Jimmy Morrissey.
Yeah, it happens on the late touchdown. Stefano Millen scores. Morrissey kind of driving his block all the way to the goal line, and I think a player came around, falling off the backside of Millen and rolled up his ankle. It didn't look good. No. Morrissey needed help to come off the field. Obviously, there's 4 seniors on Pitt's offensive line. I think you'd be hard-pressed to say that Jimmy Morrissey hasn't been the best player. And he's the sophomore of that group. He is a very important part of Pitt's offensive line, and losing him would be very, very tough. They have some parts they can mix and match. I think that If they had to go without him, they'd probably move Connor Gentino from guard to center. He's played center in the past. And then, Bryce Hargrove is a kid who's played an awful lot this season as the sixth offensive lineman. Right. He could slide in at guard, but that's a huge loss if Morrissey's unable to go. Obviously, next week in Miami, probably have to figure anybody that's 75% or less probably won't go.
Yeah, I want to bring that up. Do you see, because we've gotten some people on Twitter about that, you know Pat Narduzzi's mentality, but you're also looking at, they have this thing wrapped up. There's going to be that argument. It's going to be a topic all week. Does he sit anybody?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe the one guy you'd think that just because of, obviously anybody that's hurt or questionable probably won't play. As far as I know, Morrissey's the only guy that would kind of fit. Well, Dwayne Hendricks
didn't play.
Yeah, he didn't play, and we don't know why. And, if it's an injury, I'd think you give him the extra week as well. The only other guy I'd kind of look at as maybe not sit him, but I think Quadri Allison, he had the hamstring. He got banged up again today. I think that's a guy that he's already over 1,000 yards. You want him for 2 more games. I'd probably pump the brakes on him. I'm not saying don't play him, but you've got a guy in Darren Hall that's plenty capable of shouldering the load if necessary. So I would ease up Quadri Allison's workload, certainly. Outside of that, I don't know. There don't seem to be a lot of players where that sort of paradigm would fit because, I mean, there's mostly Pitt has been healthy this year. There aren't a lot of players that I see. Alex Buchser is a guy that's been probably not at 100% all year as well, but there aren't a lot of guys that I see at practice limping and hobbling around that are playing on game day. I mean, for the most part, Pitt's either been healthy or they've been out. I mean, missing Quentin Virginis, Keyshawn Camp, guys like that. But they don't seem to have a lot of those like walking wounded type guys that you would want to give a break to.
It's kind of weird that we're even talking about the fact that Pitt has to play a last game. Did they want to rest somebody? When the heck have we ever?
I don't know, but I don't think you want to get too far down the road that it's like some kind of meaningless game. If Pitt wants to do things that they haven't done, you want to get to that 10-win season, right? You want, this game is important. You kind of have to also, I mean, not to assume anything, but Pitt's going to be a 2+ touchdown underdog to Clemson, probably.
20,
so like,
20, yeah.
let's say Pitt loses to Miami. They'll be 7-5. Then they lose to Clemson, 7-6. All of a sudden, mess around and get in a bad bowl game. You end up with a 500 season. Like, this is still an important game that Pitt's going to really want to win. I mean, you want to be able to look back at this season with the same feeling that Pitt fans have right now. And so to preserve that, you want to go down and beat Miami, put up a good showing against Clemson, win or lose, and then get a bowl game and win it. And you do that, and you get to 9 wins. Hey, that's an impressive season. And, the other thing is I will say, though, we've seen in these openers where Pat Narduzzi plays like 9 plays on offense and defense. You're not going to see anything new for Miami.
No.
The playbook is going to get closed shut.
Yeah. And
anything that they were going to add between now and the first week of December is going to be safe for Clemson. I think you can be pretty sure of that. Get a question here, John Marshall on Twitter. How is Wake Forest able to shut down Pitt's running game when other teams were unable to? That's a pretty good question. Well, what did you see from watching the game, Mike?
I think they were just daring Kenny Pickett to throw the ball. I think they were loading the box, and I think they knew that Pitt doesn't have the tendency to go down the field, and they were keeping everything in. And to Sean Watson's credit, a lot of people were wondering, why is he passing so much? Run the ball, that's what we've been successful. He was trying to get the guys out of the box, and they took some chances down the field, and then eventually, due to a variety of things, they were able to hit. And then in the second half, it's one of those things, too. I remember during the Jerome Bettis days, pound, 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 and then come the fourth quarter, those guys are, once you're up 10 points here, those guys are sick of tackling you. And if you notice in the fourth quarter, a lot of those runs were going from 2 to 3 up to 6, 8, and 10.
Yeah, I thought from the plays that I did see, it seemed like Wake Forest was able to get penetration and keep Hall and Allison from hitting the line of scrimmage with a head of steam. I think that's neither of those guys are Hall's obviously faster, but neither of them are like elite speed running backs. If you can get them moving sideways behind the line of scrimmage, it's really hard for them to hit the hole with top speed. And I think that was one of the things Wake Forest was able to do. But of course, if you're selling out on run game penetration with linebackers hitting those A gaps, you're really opening things up downfield. And it was only a matter of time until Pitt was able to find a way to take advantage of that. You know, and I think you look at the way the passing game broke down. Yeah, French had a big play. Mack had a big play, but Rafael Araujo-Lopes, 6 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah.
That's the piece of this Pitt offense that I think we haven't really seen. He was such a weapon last year. Teams would sell out against the run, bring those linebackers up, and it would just be basketball. Over the linebacker's head, right to rah-rah, in a hole in the zone. We haven't seen that so much this year, but it was there today, and Pitt took advantage of what they were given.
And the other thing was, I thought today they were as effective with their faking and running that jet sweep as they have been all year. And I think a lot of that guy kept coming in motion. And sooner or later, Wake Forest has to respect that and hesitate a little bit. And Pitt got some runs. So I think Watson, I think this has been as good of back-to-back games as Sean Watson's called for Pitt since he's been here. I thought last week was really good. This week, you know, I don't know that people were going to say that in the first half, but he didn't change much. He stuck to what he believed, and like, you know, Narduzzi mentality, they just kept doing what they think they can be successful with. In the second half, it happened, and they just demolished Wake Forest in the second half. Where does people are going to want to know? We're going to start getting these questions now. What bowls do you see can Pitt go to?
Well, I think the one that you can almost sort of certainly cross off the list is the Belk Bowl. The ACC's tried really hard not to send the ACC championship game loser back to Charlotte, and there's going to be NC State, Virginia, Duke that are all eligible and close, so that I think they'll probably end up there. To me, I think a win against Miami and a good showing against Clemson gets Pitt into that Camping World Bowl, which is traditionally the number 2. It is the number 2 pick out of the ACC, and traditionally goes to the ACC championship game loser, although it doesn't necessarily need to. Syracuse is another team that could go there. And then after that, there's those pair of bowls that are traditionally New Year's Day bowls, but they're actually being played on New Year's Eve this year. Mm-hmm. That's the Gator Bowl and the Tax Slayer Bowl in Nashville, Gator Bowls in Jacksonville. One of those two picks an ACC team, and I have a feeling, you know, whichever of, if Pitt and Syracuse doesn't end up in that Camping World Bowl, the other one will go there. That's assuming a win and a good showing. If Pitt loses to Miami, I think they probably end up in the Sun Bowl, which is in that same tier as the Belk Bowl, the Gator Bowl, and there's one more in there as well. But like the last one's escaping me.
Military.
Oh, the Pinstripe Bowl. I don't think we'll see Pitt go back to New York so quickly. They were just there 2 years ago, obviously. But yeah, so I think best case scenario, probably that Camping World Bowl. If not, either the Gator Bowl or the bowl in Nashville, and then the Sun Bowl probably would be about as far as I see Pitt falling. And then, of course, if Pitt beats Clemson, even though they will not be in the college football playoff unless there's like meteor strikes or something like that, they will be guaranteed a New Year's Six bowl, either the Fiesta Bowl or the Peach Bowl, if they beat Clemson.
Is the Independence Bowl? Is that a?
That's the tier below.
Oh, okay.
After the Military Bowl, then the next tier starts. Then they have the Independence Bowl. There's a Northrop Grumman Bowl in Dallas, I believe it is. The Heart of Dallas Bowl, I believe. So there's 3 or 4 after the. And I actually wrote a story about this last Sunday on the site, so you can find it at Pittsburgh Sports Now, of all the possibilities. And it really hasn't changed all that much, assuming Pitt does beat Miami. My expectation is either that Gator Bowl, the bowl in Nashville, which I think used to be called the Music City Bowl. I'm not sure if it has a sponsor name. Whatever, they ain't paying us. We'll call it the Music City Bowl. The Gator Bowl, the Music City Bowl, and the Camping World Bowl in Orlando. I think those are the three primary options should Pitt win, and then the Sun Bowl if they don't.
Do you think? I think they're. I think you have a different of opinion, but I think Pitt's going to travel well this game. I think
I'm interested to see.
I think December 1st. I think it's a good time. It's after Thanksgiving. It's not just going to a bowl game. You're saying there's a pride now that you could see in the Pitt in the Pitt tweets that we're champs. Blah blah. I could see alumni going, former players heading down. I could see this really being a Charlotte. If they can't travel to Charlotte, then
yeah. I mean, we've seen like when we go on the road, there are some games where Pitt travels all right, but for the most part, it's parents, man. Like, there's not a lot of
this is a champion. Like,
of Pitt fans that travel. But the other thing I think of is like the bowl games we have seen, like the Military Bowl, Pinstripe Bowl. There are a lot of Pitt fans, probably majority Pitt fans at the Pinstripe Bowl. I think Military Bowl is a bit weird because it was essentially a road game, playing Navy in their home stadium. Right. But they still sold out their ticket allotment to that game.
They went up one, right? They sold more tickets.
And I think there was definitely majority Pitt fans at Yankee Stadium. To me, the big thing is the tickets are expensive. Clemson fans are going to drive up the demand in the secondary market. And hotel rooms, so that this is going to end up being an expensive trip, I think. Even though Charlotte's a relatively cheap flight and a doable drive, I do think it's going to end up being a tougher game to get into for some people, just because how big the Clemson fan base is and how close it is to Clemson. They're going to have plus, the other thing is these tickets have been on sale for quite some time, and I guarantee Clemson fans didn't just start to buy their tickets. They've been buying them since September. Right. So since Pat Narduzzi said buy your tickets to the game, Clemson fans listened then. They were buying them. Obviously a different situation for those folks. But I'd be surprised if it's more than, a quarter Pitt fans, just because of all those factors. But, the one thing I will say is that the Pitt fans that do travel, they make an impact. I mean, we're at some of these games late. I remember the Duke game last year was loud. Pitt fans loud. The UVA game this year, even in the rain, was loud. Pitt fans that were there at the end. So it's obviously a passionate group that does travel, and we'll see. But I'm excited to go cover it. I think it's going to be good. And there's a good question here from Tyler Weeks. What do you think the difference is from Pitt's defense that we saw the first month of September to the past 4 or 5 games? And this is actually something I really wanted to touch on. Something I'm probably going to highlight in my film study this week when I go back. Pitt threw out the game plan early in this one. I mean, they went to the nickel. They brought in Theron Coleman, and they had to. Like, this is a fast team. This is a tempo team. This is a bad matchup for Pitt's defense. To hold Wake Forest to 13 points and
206 yards,
285 total yards, that's a big game for this Pitt defense, man. This is a bad matchup for them. This is the same kind of offense that North Carolina runs, that Duke runs, that UCF runs, that Penn State runs, even that Albany runs, that ran up all kinds of yards on Pitt every game this year. This might be the best game Pitt's defense played all year. They did it because they switched up the game plan. They did it because they got turnovers. DeMar Hamlin interception, Jason Pinnock interception. I think Pinnock is a player that's going to be special for Pitt going forward. He's only a sophomore. He's maybe their best cover corner already. Certainly had a great game today, and
Jackson's had a hell of a year too.
Yeah, and Jackson's certainly good. And, I think Felipe Motley, depending on the matchup, he got beat a couple times early. He's more of a slot guy, probably. Maybe you could move him into that nickel role if you know who you're playing and you have the time to work the matchups. But I thought, in general, the Pitt defense played very, very well. And, when you look down here at the stat sheet, the one thing Pinnock had 2 tackles. Well, okay, so that's not impressive, but as a corner, you don't want him, right? That means
throwing away from you.
Every time a corner makes a tackle, that means this guy caught the ball. Jackson only had 3. So, I think that's one of the things that this team has grown, is that the ability to make some changes. So I highlighted last week, they played some 2 deep in the secondary. whatever the dynamic is between Randy Bates and Pat Narduzzi with this defense, I don't really think anybody outside the team has a good feel for how much Randy Bates influence there actually is in this defense. I think we saw throughout Josh Conklin's tenure that he didn't get a lot of influence in this defense. But we're seeing Pitt go away from the base defense quarters coverage more than they have in the past, and they've just gotten better at doing it because they've done it more often. This is a defense that now can do multiple things as opposed to do one thing, and that's what you need to beat offenses like Wake Forest, and that's, to me, the biggest difference. Not necessarily these last few games, because I don't feel like Virginia and Virginia Tech really did – they didn't really come out with a kind of game plan that exploits Pitt's defense, but Wake Forest did, and Pitt's defense was able to hold up in a pretty impressive effort.
The other thing that was impressive is the fact that we touched a lot in the preseason and training camp and beginning of the season on the depth that Pitt had in their defense. And if you would have told somebody at the beginning of the year that in a meaningful game in November and you were going to be down Keyshawn Camp, you were going to be down Dwayne Hendricks, you're going to be down Quentin Reginis, and you're going to have to win a game against a spread offense, they laugh at you and say, what's the quarterback going to get, 400 yards, and they're going to score 40 points? That speaks to the depth. Patrick Jones stepping up, Elias Reynolds stepping up, and Shane Roy, Rashad Wheeler, guys in the middle, maybe not getting stats, but they're doing their jobs, whatever they're supposed to be doing. And that's a credit to Narduzzi and his coaches for guys they're bringing in that they've coached up. They're talented enough. Now's their time. They're stepping in, and honestly, nothing against him, but I don't think this team has really missed a beat since Reginis has been gone.
No, they haven't. And you know what? I think camp hurt them a little bit more,
yeah.
and I think Hendricks' absence was pretty noticeable.
Yes,
with a lack of pass rush. But I think the one thing to me that stood out about this defense is the veteran guys that are maybe not necessarily the most talented players on the team have provided a high bar for those talented younger players. Like, you look at a guy like Jalen Twyman. When we saw him early in the season, like, he was making some explosive plays, and you think, like, yeah, and you'd really like to get him in there. But Shane Roy is playing so good that you couldn't take him out. And you look at a guy like Sean Ado, who, former walk-on. Obviously, he's got speed, but not the kind of pedigree that some of the players that behind him have. He's playing so well. He's, 8 tackles today? Big TFL, pass breakup, important one towards the end of the game. You can't take him out of the game. Dennis Briggs is playing
as good as he's playing.
I looked at that depth chart at the beginning of the year, and I saw Briggs, I saw Stalker, I saw Campbell, I saw all kinds of talent at safety, and I said, it's only a matter of time before those guys pass Briggs.
Right.
It's not he's held them off demonstratively. It's not even close. He's one of the better players in Pitt's secondary. When you have those guys that can play at that kind of level, I think it makes the whole team so much better because it does bring you depth, right? That now instead of having a guy that you don't really want to play and then a guy that you want to play that's maybe not good enough, now you got 2 really good players. It's working out really well. I think, to me, that's been the most impressive part of this defense maybe in the second half of the season is, from an individual play standpoint, is just the guys, the unheralded guys, the Roys, the Briggs, Elijah Zeiss, who just continue to go out there and play at a high level. And if one of these young guys is going to come in and play over them, they're going to have to play really well. Jazzy Stalker, another one of those guys who stepped in through some injuries. Hamlin was banged up last week. He's played a lot and played pretty well too. I think those unheralded guys are definitely the glue that's held that defense together.
In case you're just tuning in, Mike Fakovkan along with Alan Saunders, Pittsburgh Sports Now. We're at the Beaver County Auto Pittsburgh Sports Live Studio downtown, following a Pitt 34-13 win over Wake Forest. They clinched their first ACC Coastal title, and heck of a year for Pitt, and heck of the year for the athletic department. Since I don't know, I don't think it's any coincidence. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But since Heather Likes come here, I tell you what, things have gotten done. It's not just talk. Stuff's happening, and wins are happening. Pitt wins their title today. Last night, the volleyball team won their second consecutive ACC championship. Jeff, you were over at the Pete today. Pitt's 5-0. This is as well as a whole for the Pitt athletic department as they've been in a long, long time.
Yeah, I think it's hard to feel too bad about anything that's going on right now in Pitt athletics. I mean, I think the basketball team's obviously on the rise. Football team's having a great year. Volleyball. You look at the coaches that they have placed in men's and women's soccer. I think the recruiting classes that they're bringing in look outstanding. Baseball just brought in their fall recruiting class after having their best year in the ACC, and a new head coach in Mike Bell that seems to have brought a lot of energy to that program. I think it's wrestling happening right now, actually. Got the number 14 team in the country at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. I think Keith Gavin's doing great things with the Pittsburgh RTC. If you're into wrestling at all, our Stephen Patrick has the best wrestling coverage in Pittsburgh. You're not going to find a better read than him. Had a great story the other day about how bringing in those high-level wrestlers to that RTC has made that program it's making a big difference for that program. Yeah, just overall great feeling about Pitt athletics right now. And I think you're seeing a bit of a difference. In fact, actually, we got a final. Pitt 21, number 14, Northern Iowa 19. Panthers win up at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. So pretty hard to feel bad about anything from a Pitt athletics standpoint. And you know what? Let's take that one step further. How about the whole city? Duquesne basketball, neutral site win against Radford, who just beat Notre Dame last week, and Duquesne football.
Congratulations,
Conference championship, Jerry Schmidt and the Dukes. Got to feel good for that team after everything that's happened to them this year. They're going to the FCS playoffs. Great time. Robert Morris just set a 3-point shooting record, almost beat USC on the road. It's good stuff.
Good times. So,
all right, well, we're going to wrap things up here. We also have, of course, Whippeal Championships today at Heinz Field going on. So check out all of our coverage for that. I think Mike's headed over there. I'm going to stick around here and break down Pitt basketball's win. So I'll come with another video just shortly here on the channel, plus all sorts of post-game reaction from football, from basketball. We covered 9 games today for Pittsburgh Sports Now. Huge effort from the entire staff. Want to thank everyone that's out there doing all the hard work, and thank all of our readers and listeners and viewers here on this channel for putting together what we hope is a great day for the site, and obviously is a great day for the fans of the teams that we cover.
And just want to remind everyone, stay tuned with us this week. Alan will be, as he always is, over at Pitt as they prepare for Miami, and we'll let you know about our plans for Pittsburgh Sports Now. We'll definitely be, as we have all year, for every game with Pitt. We'll be at the ACC Championship. We'll let you know about any plans we have going on. As far as any pregame stuff or whatever, but that's in the works now that everything's official, so stay tuned with that. And good time for everything with Pitt Athletics, and definitely a good time for us here on the site.
All right. Until next time, I'm Alan Saunders, Mike Vukovcan from the Beaver County Auto Studios. Thanks for watching Pittsburgh Sports Live.